This film begins by showing a young girl who has just turned 18 years old named Cairo Sweet. She lives alone because her parents are abroad running a business. This morning Cairo will go to school on foot through the forest and down a fairly steep hill. Then we are shown a man named Jonathan Miller, who currently works as a teacher at the school where Cairo seeks knowledge. You need to know that Miller had dreams of becoming a writer, but God had other plans, so he had to accept the destiny of becoming a teacher. When arrived at class, Cairo greeted Mr. Miller, who was preparing learning materials to give to his students. There Miller was surprised because it was too early for his students to arrive at school. Not long after, Winnie entered the class and immediately invited Cairo to look for food before class started. After they leave, Miller is curious about the book Cairo brought. He was surprised when saw the book because it was a copy of his writing. Miller didn't forget to tell his wife about this. He felt proud after knowing that someone had read his writing. Seeing her husband happy, Beatrice wanted to add to his enjoyment by inviting him to activities, but the atmosphere was disturbed by an incoming call on Beatrice's cell phone. The next day, Miller and Boris were enjoying hot coffee while chatting casually. From a distance they saw Cairo walking towards there. Cairo immediately approached them, and Miller asked, "Aren't you afraid to go through the forest alone?" Smiling, Cairo replied, "No, I'm not afraid." Another time Cairo told Winnie that lately she was always thinking about the exam would face to enter college. Then Winnie gave her advice to approach Mr. Miller to make the exam easier. At that time Cairo was worried about his age, but Winnie emphasized that age would not be a problem. Hearing all that, Cairo will consider her proposal. The next day when class was in session, Cairo was still considering Winnie's advice while paying attention to teacher Miller's good looks, and suddenly Miller came from behind, handed him a piece of paper while whispering, "Meet me after class." Not wanting to waste this opportunity, Cairo met Miller in his office, where Miller said that he was very impressed with Cairo's writing talent. Not only that, Miller then asked Cairo to write on a theme he had prepared, and if Cairo managed to finish it with well, he promised to make the exam easier. When Cairo heard the offer, she agreed, and before Cairo left, Miller asked to see him this weekend. Days continued to pass. They were about to meet at the promised place. When Cairo was confused looking for Miller, suddenly he whispered from behind. This little thing made Cairo blush a little. They witnessed the appearance of a man reading poetry. The next day Cairo wore all black clothes, which looked even sexy. Miller, who was chatting with Boris, seemed to really like her. Boris then left there as if to give them a chance to chat further. After school, Miller heard the sound of his cell phone ringing in his bag. In confusion he picked up the incoming phone call, and it turned out to be Cairo. She explained that the cell phone was his and had deliberately kept it in Miller's bag to make it easier to communicate. In between conversations Cairo invited Miller to come to her house immediately. Without having to wait long, Miller immediately stepped on the gas and headed home to Cairo. Miller has now arrived in front of Cairo's house. He was very amazed to see Cairo's beauty, who now looked even more elegant wearing a white dress. Cairo continued walking towards Miller. Then they were alone in the cold rain, which made their passion even higher. Not wanting to do activities outside, they continued inside the house, relaxing with full appreciation. Upon returning from there, Miller received a message from Cairo containing the completed short essay. Miller then moved to the barn to read it so his wife wouldn't disturb him. He read Cairo's writing with such emotion that he was carried away by the atmosphere. Tireless Cairo now walks back to school, but when he is in class Miller's response to Cairo suddenly becomes different. Cairo felt strange and asked what really happened. Miller explained that his writing was not worth reading. Not only that, Miller also stated that he now regrets entrusting his project to a small child. Of course, this argument made Cairo very sad, and she rushed out of the classroom full of deep emotions and disappointment. Cairo then explained her sadness to Winnie while crying. While elsewhere Miller was seen daydreaming, his wife was trying to cheer him up. Suddenly Boris came to visit there, and Boris turned out to be chatting with Winnie. Because Miller didn't meet him, Boris immediately went home. After that, Beatrice suddenly became suspicious of Miller's relationship with Cairo. At that time Miller tried to convince his wife that there was nothing to do with Cairo, but his wife didn't believe him and promised to divorce him if all the suspicions were true. While Miller's class was in progress, Cairo was not seen there at all, and it turned out she was in the principal's office being questioned about his relationship with Miller. Cairo tried to explain in as much detail as possible and in more detail from the beginning until the illicit activity occurred. After teaching, Miller was immediately questioned by the principal, but it turned out that Miller did not tell the truth about the incident, and he emphasized that his relationship with Cairo was only limited to students and teachers as usual. After providing false information, Miller now tells Boris about the problem. At that time, Boris blamed Miller for not being able to control his turmoil. Miller must now regret his actions and must be able to accept the consequences. Upon returning home, Miller was met with the anger of his wife, who was fed up with her husband's lies. Miller tried to explain, but his wife looked at him in disbelief. She said, "You are a liar." Meanwhile, in another place, Winnie meets Cairo. There Winnie expresses her disappointment with Cairo because her actions went too far, which caused teacher Miller's career to be ruined. But there Cairo actually says that this is her greatest achievement. Winnie cries, regretting because she gave advice yesterday, and now Winnie feels guilty because the advice she gave made her friend a very scary person. Before Winnie left, Cairo warned Winnie to be more careful. At the end of the film, Cairo is seen accidentally meeting Miller while shedding tears, so the film ends here. There are several points that can be taken from this film. From Mr. Miller's point of view, we should not be people who are not responsible for the actions we have committed. From Cairo's point of view, we can conclude that feelings of disappointment and hurt can change a person's character, even from good to very evil. This does not apply to examples. Whereas from Winnie we learn that never put forward bad ideas, because these ideas could be a big problem. Thank you for watching. Subscribe now for other interesting content. See you in the next video.